Welcome to our program, Coach-to-Coach. Today's guest is Chris Ryan. Chris is a certified strength and conditioning specialist and a certified personal trainer and is the founder of Chris Ryan Fitness, a world-class online fitness experience. Chris has represented premier fitness brands such as Lululemon, Nike, Under Armour, Everlast, Polo Ralph Lauren, Adidas, and Polar, and has featured Men's Health, Women's Health, Men's Fitness, Shape, GQ, and many more. Thanks for joining us today, Chris. It's great to see you.
Thank you for having me, Greg. I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. The way I like to kick these off is just ask what first sparked your interest in coaching.
That's kind of goes back. I think I've always been an athlete since I was a young kid. I did little like mini workouts with my dad when I was 5, 6 years old. He would use me as a rabbit and his
Mm,
what he would call a rabbit, where he would be doing his sprints on the grass and at the soccer and football fields, and he would like spot me like some odd yards and. I just have great fond memories of doing that with my dad. And then that kind of like parlayed into soccer and basketball at an early age, and then eventually into track and field and into collegiate track and field at University of Florida. And then really what I found is that I got in the business world in my 20s, in a whole other sector. I had my own business in Surf Pro. It's a water fire mold damage restoration business that was a franchise business. Had that with my brother, and I really loved leading people and marketing and sales and building teams and building people up within those teams. And I remembered like something that when I we sold that business successfully when I was 28, I was like, what do I really love to do? Well, I knew I'd love to lead people. I love to like get the best out of people and kind of help people surprise themselves with their own potential in the business world, for instance.
mm,
But I was like, I'm really passionate about health and fitness at a core of who I truly am as a person. And so I was like, if I can combine those two into a great business model that I could build a business to, pay my bills and that sort of a thing, like what would you do if, that the old saying, what would you do if you didn't get paid today? Like what would be your most passionate about? And I was like, I always loved health and fitness, and I always loved to surprise people with their own potential. And when I could combine those two, it was just off to the races. And so that's really how it stems from me with getting in the coaching business himself.
yeah, I love it. Yeah, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, something like that.
Totally. 100%. 100%. It's just it's something to be said for that for sure. It's just like find your passions. You're gonna and build a business around those passions. And there's a lot of people that treat things as hobbies, but if you treat it like a business, you're going to be successful with it. And don't treat it like a hobby because it shouldn't be a hobby. Sometimes when people get in the fitness and health industry, they kind of like tiptoe into it and they treat it more like a hobby
Yeah,
rather than a business itself. And if you treat it like a business, you'll truly grow it into a real business.
yeah, yeah. Um, and before we started recording, you were telling me about your studio there that you're in and for a lot of
Yeah.
clients. So I'm curious to learn a lot more about what it is that you do and how do you interact with people and deliver your experience to them and help motivate them and tap into their potential.
For sure. Well, in 2018, I had a great opportunity. Had a great opportunity. It was picked up by Mir, which just had funding from a bunch of venture capitalists out of the Bay Area. They've got the first round of funding of about $10 million, and then they got a second round of funding a year later for another 10 million. And we were eventually bought out by Lululemon for $500 million in June of 2020. And that was like the world's first full-length interactive uh, algorithm, or excuse me, uh, display TV style where you could see yourself working out.
Mm,
So, Greg, you would be working out, but I would be the trainer in that hologram style, screen in the
yeah,
mirror itself. But the mirror would be your own reflection, so you could see your form. You could see what you were doing. It was highly motivational. You could see people that are in your class in their little bubbles coming across at the bottom of the screen. So it almost became, home-based boutique fitness style workout, if
mm,
you will. And that was across a whole different number of genres, and strength and cardio workouts. Those are my main components, but we also had yoga instructors, Pilates instructors, you name it. We had stretch and mobility classes in there. It was just really fantastic. We even had one-off programs that I developed, like the golf program. I worked with Titleist got certified with Titleist and worked on a golf strength and mobility program. We had other trainers that did Tai Chi
Mm.
programs that were certified in that. So it was just a whole all-encompassing 360 view of health and fitness. It wasn't just hitting barbells and was doing sprints and that sort of a thing, which
Yeah.
I love that. That's my forte. But it's interesting. So after that, we were brought up by Lululemon. I was we left I left that company in 2024. They downsized that company from doing live workouts to keeping it only on demand. So left in good graces terms with them, and then I ended up starting my own app called Chris Ryan Fitness that I was able to use what I had learned there with on camera techniques and teaching and that sort of a thing, rather than just in person,
Mm.
like I'd done years prior. And then I developed my own app, and in this day and age of the amazing age that we live in so many levels of the information age, the technological age, the AI age, if you will. Some challenges, of course, in there, but also it allows you to have 6 billion potential customers around the planet. And so for me, I was like, I speak English. If there's a lot of English speakers around the world, I have people that have the app in the UK and Australia and South Africa, and it's been shown on 6 continents. People are streaming workouts from all over the world. Still waiting for Antarctica, but not many people live down there. But it's been really cool to see, like within less than 2 years of having the app out there into the wild, if you will, that it really has taken hold of so many people and burning so many calories, releasing so many endorphins, building so much muscle for so many different people around the planet, which is just so fun for me to sit there and say, wow, I'm empowering and bettering all these people's lives,
Yeah.
rather than just one-to-one training. I do one-to-one online training as well over FaceTime, and I also have a one-to-one coaching accountability program that's very successful as well. I love working. Usually, that's more geared towards like the business executives, people that they kind of are self-driven, but they just need a little bit more of accountability, check-ins. They're looking for a certain style of program, whether it's for losing 10 pounds or 20 pounds or gaining 10 pounds of muscle or training for a race or something along those lines,
Yeah.
where it's a little bit more streamlined overall. So yeah, I just think that, working with the executives of the world, understanding how top level, A+ performers operate their daily lives has always been intriguing for me as a business person as well as a fitness professional too.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love the story. I was imagining that online fitness world kind of exploded. I'm imagining during the pandemic because everyone's locked
Mhm.
down and innovation is a necessity is the mother of all innovation. So it's kind of like everyone's locked down. Okay, we can train you from home.
Yep.
And I'm glad to see that a lot of this is kind of stuck around. I'm always on the lookout for, what are the silver linings from the pandemic? Like all these great new technologies and processes and things that people have
Mhm.
developed that is stuck around, and this seems to be one of them.
And even this world, the podcast world, I think really took off as well. I think people are much more involved with inviting people into their homes, like
Yeah,
through podcasts or through, media, video tutorials, that sort of a thing, rather than just being like, oh, well, it has to be perfect lighting. It has to be in a massive Hollywood studio to shoot this. It's like, no, like you want to keep it professional. I shoot in 4K.
yeah,
But this is my studio. I have the studio equipment set up. I showed you earlier before
yeah,
our call started, and it's just kind of like, you build it. It's professional at the end of the day. But I want people to understand, like, I don't want any more barriers to people getting fit. And I think that there's plenty of barriers for people out there. So
yeah,
everything I do is either body weight or dumbbell based or resistance band or mini band focused, and that's it. I want to have like the least investment possible for you. You don't need to have a big, beautiful power rack like I do. You don't
yeah,
need a rower or an echo bike like I have. You don't need $5,000 hip abduction equipment and that sort of a thing. Like, yes, those pieces of equipment are fantastic and they have their place.
yeah,
But for the vast majority of 99% of the people, you're never going to have that in your home. And so you can do these workouts at a gym, of course, because you can download them, you can stream them anytime all over the world. But at the same time, I wanted like less barriers to entry because I already think that there's so many barriers into entry for people to get fit in the first place. And I mean by barriers to entry, not so much from a cost perspective or from an equipment perspective, but more from like a motivation and
mm,
consistency perspective of like, Oh, I'm so busy. Well, everyone's busy, but it's about finding that like dominant buying motive to understand that like, if I do a workout for 20 minutes today and I do another one in 2 days' time, I'm going to feel so much better, right? Overall, especially as those workouts accumulate down the line. If
Yeah,
I just drink a little less soda, a little less alcohol, if I get an extra hour of sleep, drink a little bit more water, like those are all super low-hanging fruits that are just like amazing for people, but it doesn't happen overnight. Like one workout is not going to change your life.
yeah,
Like you might feel good for a few minutes afterward, but when you become in that phase of like, this is just a non-negotiable for my everyday life, guess what? Within 2 weeks, within 4 weeks, within 2 years, you're going to see a whole different person in front of you in a positive way.
yeah, absolutely. You mentioned working with executives and things. Is that kind of the niche that you're focused on, or and is it?
Yeah, especially for the one-to-one training, I
Yeah,
just found that for the type of training that I offer and the type of I guess the one-to-one accountability, it just really works well for both them and me for the hours that I can give. I only have 24
yeah,
hours in a day. I'm a dad with 3 kids. I still want to like go to watch them in their games if I can. I can't work 24 hours a day. And
sure.
sometimes when you trade dollars for hours, there's only so many hours in the day. Plus, when you're running a massive community like I have on the Chris Ryan Fitness app. But I found that, what happens is we had talked earlier a few minutes ago about necessity is the mother of invention. It's kind of like this kind of came about because people wanted a little bit more than the app had, but they
Mm,
didn't necessarily need FaceTime training every other day. They
right.
needed something kind of in between the two. And they needed a little bit more handholding, a little bit more accountability, but they didn't need to say, okay, I need you for a full hour like this. And okay, Chris, let's train together, like
Yeah,
that sort of a thing.
yeah,
Right. And so, which is great because I was able to figure out a way to like carve out that niche a little bit more.
mm,
Because I think the app is fantastic for people that want to have a little bit that are a little bit tighter on money, that want to have just they're going to plug and play into their smart TV. They're going to cast right out from their smartphone from the app right into their TV like a remote,
yeah,
and there's beautiful apps right in front of you, and they're just going to follow the app and they love doing the workouts and that sort of a thing. And then others are going to be like, well, I really want to like I'm just not I need to have somebody like check in with me over text every day
mm,
or an email every couple of days, or like show me like what I've been doing and like kind of like go over like a bar chart. So that's why like, the executives tend to think along those lines a little
yeah,
bit more. So especially the business folks, the people that are in the finance world, the big law world, they tend to think like that. And that's kind of like that niche that I've
yeah,
parked into myself as far as like in the business sense, where it's kind of made itself happen in front of me.
yeah,
Especially being in the New York City area, those are where I started training a lot of clients in person 15, 20 years ago. And so it kind of like built its business at that point. But then during COVID, I switched everything to online.
yeah,
And then, of course, Mirror really took it online. And then after that, after I left Lululemon Studio, I ended up going into the online space even further with my own app.
yeah.
So,
I'm curious if you can share some examples. I'm imagining, the body mind connection, like, managing stress and overwhelm and just, executives in a high pressure job
yeah.
and the benefits that kind of getting in the gym and uh, you know, releasing those endorphins and all the
Yeah.
stuff that happens. I'm curious if you can just share some kind of
Sure,
success
of
success
course. I'd
stories that
love
you've had.
to. I actually think like the new biggest flex in the business world is your longevity in your workouts. I think like the term longevity gets thrown out a lot in this last year or two, in a good way. And I think it's a positive thing. It's less about like getting big bulging biceps. Like we grew up, like when we were growing up in the 80s and 90s, like my middle name's actually Conan after Conan, like Arnold
Mm,
Schwarzenegger.
yeah.
My dad was a huge Conan or Arnold fan from the 70s. I was born in 1980, and
Yeah.
like the Conan came out or was in the works in 1980. I think it came out in 1981. But anyways, it was in the works. So like everyone, if you read Muscle and Fitness back then, of like you knew like Arnold was going to be in Conan at some point.
Yeah.
So I know I was born in April of 80. So my dad like talked my mom into naming my middle name being Conan. So that's just a
So
whole
this was
other story.
destiny
But
then.
yeah, it was just total destiny, right? For sure. Predetermined. And then, but I think like with the executives, I think like really the new thing is the new flex is like not like, driving a bigger car or that sort of a thing. Or I think it's buying your time back and also being fit. And I think fit is subject to different definitions for different folks. Some people want to be very endurance focused, right? Which is totally cool. Some people want to be very like strength focused, which is totally cool. I kind of like to have like a little bit of a hybrid of both, like where you can work on your VO2 max for heart health and overall stability, longevity. There's so many studies about, health and wellness within like the VO2 yourself.
Mm.
And I think that's great. And I think sometimes the endurance folks really become very endurance heavy, and I have nothing against the ultra people out there doing the ultra endurance challenges. Hat tipped my hat to all of them. I just like to think of things in terms of efficiency. Like if you're an endurance athlete, it takes a lot of time to do your said event or your said training.
Yeah.
And I think that for the vast 99% of the majority of the people out there, they don't have that time to dedicate to, they might have a different style career. And some people, they might have family or whatever. And like some people can work it all in. But if you're a triathlete and you want to train at a certain level, you have to train like several hours a day.
Mm.
Like you have three events that you're doing a marathon, you're doing a, 110-mile bike. Like you can't just train, sprints during that. But like if
Yeah.
you're trying to like generally lose, 10 to 20 or 30 pounds and you're trying to like get your posture better and you're trying to like physically look healthy, you could do that in a much more efficient way, through a certain amount of weight training, a certain amount of VO2 max training as well, certain amount of like sprint endurance styles training. You don't need to go out there and work out for 2 or 3 or 4 hours a day, like some people think that they need to. But I do think that like I was saying, the new flex within the business world is like the longevity because you're able to earn more money the healthier you are because you're going to be in the game longer. And I think that if you look at like the remember the movie Wall Street with
Hmm.
Michael Douglas and Charlie Sheen, kind of like in the 80s, it was like the go-go 80s. It was like, there was a lot of drinking, there was drugs, there was smoking, all that stuff. And like there's the scene with Michael Douglas plays Gordon Gekko. He's like smoking but walking on the treadmill at the same time because his heart's not good. And
Yeah.
like like you're like, wow, this is such an interesting thing. And now you look at like Jeff Bezos is like, he's jacked and he's
Mm.
like, you have all these people in Silicon Valley that are all looking at like ways to live longer and more prosperous. And you know, the baby boomers and the Gen Xers kind of want to turn the clock back on father time, like where 60 is the new 50, 50 is the new 40,
Yeah.
that sort of a thing. And I have no problem with that whatsoever. Especially if you're like more mentally healthy and physically healthy from the inside out, not just your physical appearance. I think like if you're holistically healthy within yourself and in your soul, you're going to exude a certain positivity out there and be able to be the best version of yourself no matter what. And I do think that exercise is truly the best medicine when it comes to that. I just, I think that it's such an easy thing to do, but it's such a hard thing to do at the same time.
Yeah.
And usually the folks that are the executives, if you will, in that caliber of what they've achieved in the business world, they usually are very driven. But they know that they're not always going to be the best ones know that they're always not the smartest person in the room, and they like to hire experts,
Yeah.
right? Like the best CEOs in the world hire the best CFOs and the best COOs, right? Like the best CEOs in the world know that they don't want to be the smartest person in the room. They
Yeah.
want to surround themselves with a cabinet the way that, our presidential system works in the best way possible sometimes. Like where you surround yourself with smarter people and you understand like what they all add to the value of what the challenge is at hand. And
Yeah.
then you make the best decision possible, right? And so that's really what I've seen working with the executive folks over the course of time. And it's always fun to be around people that have achieved such success. Like when you're training a billionaire, there's something to be said for that,
Yeah.
right? Like you're
Right.
like, well, how the heck did you get to that level, right? Like, and you hear one of my favorites is like this guy, he's early 80s now. I don't train him anymore. He wanted to train mostly in person, but I trained him for a number of years. And he's basically a billionaire. I mean, he's definitely like up there, like
Yeah.
as far as net worth. I think he's a billionaire. But depending on how those numbers are calculated, depending on the Forbes list and that sort of a thing. But when you talk to people like this and you see that they're just like a super driven, normal person,
Yeah.
right? Yes, they've had they've had some luck and be in the right place at the right time, of course, and most of them would probably say that. But at the same time, they're very driven and they sit there and they make those decisions and they know when to go all in. And they also know that just because they had a past failure doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a problem. Like this one gentleman had gone bankrupt, I think, twice or
Yeah.
three times on different big development projects. Um, and yet he rose to the top. It's kind of like baseball. Like if you bat 300, you're in the Hall of Fame. You don't need to bat 1,000. I think sometimes like the average person, and I've been guilty of this before, it's like, oh my God, you stumbled and tripped. Like, oh no, like, and you start to overthink it. And
Yeah.
when you surround yourself with these business folks that are just like, nope, I know one speed and that's just go, and there will be shortfalls along the line and that sort of a thing and challenges and
Yeah.
mishaps and bankruptcies or whatever, but you're just keep plowing ahead no matter what with making the best decision you can with the information at hand.
Yeah. So it sounds like with those folks, you don't really have to worry too much about motivation and them showing up.
No,
It's
you'd be surprised though, because they need to have, I guess, a corral like type mentality, like where you got to like coax them into that right direction is
yeah.
really what I found. And everyone's individualized, but it's more about like developing situations with anybody where they can be successful. So if someone's traveling on a red eye, you kind of got to understand, like, okay, well, tell me about your business travel coming up.
Mm.
Let's look for solutions, not for excuses. So, okay, so you're going to be you're flying from New York to LA. Okay, but what's your schedule like? Oh, well, you could do this, this, and this.
Mm.
Great, thank you for that. Because they're too busy thinking about what they need to do in their own business world, but they know that they need to get fit. They just don't have the capacity to like think of like, oh, that's a great idea, right?
Yeah.
And I always love like thinking of like doing less or doing more with less, and is then back to being as efficient as possible. Like just because you've traveled doesn't necessarily mean that you can't work out. Maybe you just go down to the hotel gym and you're going to do something for 20 minutes just to stretch out and kind of like get the travel bugs out of your system and get your internal clock and system working a little bit better. And then you're going to feel better. Your skin's going to look better. You're going to be more lively. You're going to have blood to the surface in your eyes. And, like you're going to have you're going to have the capacity to go through that tough day ahead of you, and
Yeah.
charge it ahead. And that's what I like to see with people. And then just, even if they're not traveling, if they're just dealing with a very stressful situation with their business or with work, it's fun to sit there and like figure out solutions for them. And I
Mm.
think the best executives in the world, it's like you go to somebody, you're like, okay, great. Here, tell me the challenges but tell me more solutions than the challenges, or, tell me the opportunities that we can do. Because
Yeah.
I always think glass is half full. There truly is. And anyone can come there and say, whoa, like you're gonna be tired, you're tired, you don't know what to do. Like you have to do like this, and this for work. You got to have this business dinner or this breakfast meeting or whatever it is. But in between that, do you have this 30 minutes that we can make this work for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could actually make that work. Great. Well, here's what we're going to do. Right. And when you can like think for the people, that's truly what they're paying you for.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when you can do the outside thinking for them, because they know that their strength, power, their longevity is so important for their overall well-being and also their overall business's well-being in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm just imagining, the what you said earlier about the simplicity of some of the equipment and body weight movements and bands and things you can travel with, and you don't, if you're, you can do, you can get creative and figure out a way to work out
Oh, and I do that
in any
myself. I
situation.
practice what I preach. My
Yeah.
wife, she's Greek American. We go over to Greece to see a lot of her family every summer for a few weeks, and like it's an amazing place. But we're usually in some like outer reaches in the islands, like everyone does in Greece in the
Mm.
summertime. And there's not like gyms set up all the time. I mean, a lot of times it's these small villages, and it's beautiful. but there's like tavernas and there's small shops and that sort of thing, but there's no gyms like
Yeah.
around there. If there is, it's like a 30, 40 minute drive. I'm not gonna go drive to a gym like over the mountainside or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I want to hang out with my family at the beach. So like I'll bring my bands, I'll do hill sprints during like siesta hour time in the heat of the day. Like I'll do a long run here or there. I'll do some like short little sprints here or there. I'll do a bunch of body weight moves, push-ups and that and squats. And guess what? I don't come back out of shape. I'm
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Like I might come back, I might not be able to lift like 100% of what I lifted, but I'll still be like at 90%, just because you're exercising and you're moving your body under some sort of tension. And sometimes it's fun just to switch things up. And even for my own well-being and my own thinking, I'm always like, well, I got to practice what I preach. Like it's not, you can't always work out at the same time of the day. You
Mm.
can't always do the same, you work out in the same spot. People sometimes become so like ingrained, like I can only work out at 7 a.m. And if I can't, I'm not going to work out. Well, sometimes you're not going to be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
Like I can only work out in my home gym, or I can only work out at my Equinox or my Planet Fitness or whatever it is, and I know exactly my setup, and that's all I do. I go from this machine to this machine. Well, that's okay if it works for you, but life changes a lot,
Yeah.
and you got to figure out like the overall system first and foremost, rather than just like what you think works for you at that point in time, right?
Right.
And I'm all for like, like normalcy, but life's not normal for most people, at least especially the people that I
Yeah.
train and coach a
Absolutely.
lot in the one-to-one program.
I imagine with those folks too, it's traveling. It's not just time to work out, but it's diet and
Oh, for
staying
sure,
hydrated and
100%.
all the
It can
rest
be
of it.
something simple as like having a bowel movement when you've been traveling, not to go, too crass, but
Yeah.
like, like travel syndrome and whatever else, or like you're eating different foods if you're in a foreign country, than maybe you've been, and you're really out of whack with like your time zone change, which is
Hmm.
extremely hard if you're traveling from North America to Asia or Europe and like only for a 2 or 3 day trip or whatever,
Yeah.
and then to adjust and then staying hydrated and then you're going around to a lot of meetings, or you're walking a manufacturing plant, or you're out late at business dinners and functions and that sort of a thing. So you don't really know you know what it can be very challenging, but the main thing is that you take those challenges with a grain of salt and you say, okay, 24 hours in a day, no matter what, no matter where I'm at in the world, we all have the same 24 hours, right?
Yeah.
And we got to make do with like something to move my body at that point in time, because I know moving the needle forward and moving the ball forward is just going to be a little bit better along the lines. And I know if I do that, I'm going to be able to, be the best spouse, the best parent, the best colleague, the best business owner or business person that I can be from in the longest possible, and hopefully increase your earning potential along the way, which I'm put my foot down on that one for sure. I
Yeah.
definitely think that the fitter you are, the healthier you are, the more earning potential you'll have in your lifetime for
Yeah.
sure.
Have you discovered like what the secret sauce is, like that secret motivator is that keeps people kind of engaged and coming back? Is it just being present to a goal, or like what have you noticed with people that really makes a difference for them?
Yeah, I think it depends on the person, but I think like one of the major overall things that I see is that the people just generally feel better. They
Mm.
feel good about themselves. And it comes more, excuse me, from the intrinsic motivation style, where like I tell people this when I schedule a call for the first time with them. I'm like, I can't want this more than you want it yourself. I want this up
Mm.
to the point that you want it, but I can't want it more for you, right? And I truly mean that. It's like any sort of great coach can't want it more than their players,
Mm.
right? They can want it as much as their players, but their players are ultimately going to be the ones that are going to be out there performing. Like if I was training you, Greg, like I can't do the reps and sets for you.
Mm.
I can sit there and cheerlead you on. I can develop the most kick-ass program. I can get your water. I can like wake you up. I can do all this stuff, but I can't want it more than you want it,
Yeah.
ultimately. And I think like when you can present yourself as like this um positive coach in those persons in the people's lives, so that you set that floor for them to where they can't drop below the floor.
Mm.
And then they will just generally rise up to the top after that to the ceiling of their own potential ceiling at that point, you know? A lot of times they don't have a ceiling. It's more about like, well, how good can I be? You know, and they just keep on getting better and better and better.
Yeah.
And I always like to say the journey is the destination. I know that term gets thrown out a lot, but I do think like it's kind of like you board a ship, it's never going to port. It doesn't need to, it's not supposed to. You're just going to be out to sea in this, you know, this zone of like health and fitness, if you will.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are always like, oh, I need to train for something. And I'm like, that's great. You know, do your 10K or do your high rocks race or do your competition or whatever it might be. Or, you know, go win the tennis club championship at your country club or whatever it might be, whatever your thing
Yeah.
is, the men's hockey league or something like that. But like at the end of the day, like, you know, like let's reset, recoup, and then try again next year, you know, or
Yeah.
next season, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. For me, my long-term fitness goal, my kids are 22 and 20s, but and no marriages or kids in the near future. But I look out and I want to be a grandfather that can, shoot hoops with his grandkids or go skating or, pick them up and wrestle. I want to be an active participant in my grandkids' lives. So for me, that's my own
No,
personal
totally.
fitness goal
I
is
love that. And it's funny you say that because I now in my mid 40s, I kind of think of fitness in a different way for myself personally as well. Like in my, you know, for a lot of times I was performance based. Like I would work out for an end goal to be faster in track and field. And then in my 20s, I was skinny in my teens from running so much, so I wanted to pack on muscle, right? And like what young man doesn't want to like look like his namesake Arnold or whatever,
yeah,
right? So I was never really into the bodybuilding training. I was much more into like overall like hybrid style fitness where I wanted to be like more athletic and fast and agile and mobile, but also put on size.
mm,
And I achieved that up to a point. And then I was like, okay, well now that I'm a dad, I'm like, you know, I have heart health issues in my family. My dad had quadruple bypass at age 55. And like even though he was fit and strong, and so like I've naturally high genetic cholesterol. So I kind of always got to keep that in check. And like, you know, people look at me and be like, whoa, you're super fit. I want to
mm,
look like you. And I'm like, well, they might even have better like blood workup than me,
yeah,
you know, on a cholesterol, LDL, HDL level. And unfortunately, like, you know, like a lot of it is genetics. A lot of it is like whatever your mom and dad gave you for better or for worse, right? They gave me a lot of great things, but also some things that you got to deal with
yeah,
on your own. So I'm like, maybe, you know, I'm going to work a little bit more on my VO2 max now that I'm a little older, and that sort of a thing. And guess what? I don't really lose much strength during that. I'm not going crazy with endurance, but I'm just doing like certain style of interval style training for myself that I feel is like overall heart healthy and keeps me healthy overall without being stressful on my joints and my knees and ankles and hips and back and everything else. And but yeah, I just it's you know it's interesting to see how that all shakes
yeah,
out for you for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Well, you mentioned being in your 40s. I'm in my early 50s, and uh, one of the things that's become important for me is to avoid injuries. um,
Totally.
and
Yeah.
I wonder if there's anything you can say about that, like if it's just as simple as listening to your body or just doing certain things or avoiding certain things that at certain ages.
Yeah.
That
I think like understanding prehab versus rehab is a bit better for
mm,
everyone out there. And I mean prehab, it's kind of like if you get hurt during something, right? You got to go rehab at it with a PT. And the physical therapist will have you kind of do a certain number of like nuanced exercises for your rotator cuff, your AC joint, your hips, your ankle, your knee, whatever it is. And they get you back to being like to square one, if you will,
mm,
but they're not going to get you necessarily better than that, right? Like their goal for insurance purposes and for their own training purposes is to say, I need your shoulder to go back into having that full range of motion. And once it does, perfect, my job is done, right? And then you're off to the races, right? Especially, well, at least that's the way it works in America here with our insurance system set up the way that it
yeah,
is. So, and I love PTs. I've learned so much from like watching PTs, interacting with PTs. I had injuries over the course of time in my track and field career, and I always kind of like looked at it as a student when I would be doing stuff to my hamstring, be like, why are we doing this? And they would teach me.
yeah,
And then, of course, through my own studies and you know, getting my own certifications over the you know, the last couple of decades, you learn, right? And you learn by doing, and then you learn by watching other people that are experts in that industry do their work. But I always like to think of prehab style movements. So working with bands, doing the nuance exercises for your ankle, like dorsiflexion of your feet, getting stronger toes, like all that stuff
Mm.
helps to have a base of support from less slip and falls as you age, right? And we
Yeah.
talked about being a fit, healthy, active grandfather, which I think is one of my main goals too, as to get older. We still have young kids though. We're 11, 9, and 2.5, almost 3. So
Nice.
I have a ways to go there on that realm. So I really have to stay in shape because I'm going to be much older than you are as they get older. We
Yeah.
had kids relatively later in life, which is totally fine. But yeah, it's just by the time I'm a grandfather, I might be in my 70s,
Yeah.
but it is what it is. Yeah, but it's fun to think about that in general. But I think like the learning how the body moves,
Yeah.
right? And moving pain-free is one of the like best things you can do to your body, right?
Mm.
When I went to Titleist for golf, I learned from a lot of their head trainers, their golf pros, that specific to the golf industry in general. And they came out with a certification back in the early 2000s, I believe, or late 90s, early 2000s, because the golf industry up until when Tiger came into line was kind of like on its downturn. It was like not doing as well as it was.
Yeah.
And they started to survey folks and they realized that, oh, my back's out. I tweak something, my hip's out, my knee hurts when I golf. And so they started to understand like we just got to keep golfers healthier because the
Mm.
average golfer in the 90s wasn't that healthy. They were like, they would sit in a chair for a long period of time and they would come out and they would probably have a little girth around their waist and
Yeah.
they hadn't moved in a twisting formation. And all of a sudden they would just go out and swing a club like at, 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Well, that's ripe for disaster, right? So you got to take into account mobility, like how your body moves, like your warm up, your cool down, like all that stuff.
Mm.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to sit there and like warm up and cool down for your whole workout. You got to build in those moves along the way. And
Yeah.
like for just the Titleist example, they realized that the main thing that people are telling them is that they just want to be pain free.
Mm.
So they want to like if they can keep golfers pain free, guess what? Golfers are going to buy new clubs. They're going to buy new country club memberships. They're going to golf at the public municipal courses much more often. They're going to golf more often in general, which is a great thing for
Yeah.
Titleists in a good way because they're a business and they want to sell more golf balls and more golf clubs and golf bags for an industry as a whole, which is great. And I think that's a great sport for people being outside and all of it,
Yeah.
right? And they're generally happy when they're out there and their
Yeah.
pastime that they're doing with their kids and businesses and whatever else, right? But that's just a one-off example. But I think like being pain-free during your movement is great. And I think that like as you get into your 40s, your 50s, you find out your tendons, joints, they exist. Whereas
Mm.
in your 20s, you're just like kind of like, and I can do anything, and you recover much more quickly. But as you get a little older, for a whole host of reasons, could be sedentary lifestyle, could just be like you're getting older. You can't train the same way you did when you're in your 20s, right? Or your teens. And I think especially I'm gonna call out all the guys because we are two guys here.
Mm.
I know for a fact that like there's an ego amongst lifting with guys, like where I've seen it with friends. I've had it myself early on in my 20s where I'm like, oh, I took off a week because I was on vacation or whatever. I was busy and I come back and I try to do the same workout, right? Well, maybe I should have like dialed it back a little bit, or maybe I should have done some accessory work to complement those big lifts,
Yeah.
and that sort of a thing. I can't just sit there and bench 3 days a week and expect my AC joint to be healthy. Like, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's just not going to be that way. Elite power lifters don't do that. And so why do you think like, Tim and John can do that, right? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. I do think like checking your ego a little bit, working out a little bit more for full range of motion as much as possible.
Mm.
Realizing that you don't necessarily need to do the volume that you might have done in your 20s, but you want to do certain movement patterns. You want to do a push, you
Mm.
want to do a pull, right? So if you're doing a push, horizontal or a vertical push, right? You want to do the opposite range of a pull, right?
Yeah.
Or a pull, right? So you want to think of doing rows or pull-ups or something along those lines too if you're doing a lot of upper body lifting.
Yeah.
You can, lower body. I'm big into unilateral movements as well. Unilateral being single leg exercises,
Mm,
of the ability for balance control and coordination as we get older in our lives is imperative for your overall health and well-being because the amount of slip and falls that older folks have in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, like my grandfather on my dad's side, like he had a slip and fall and went in the hospital and then come back out,
yeah,
right? Like that's what happens in the 80s. Like if you go to the hospital in your 80s for a
yeah,
slip and fall, yeah, I don't know what the stat is. I think it's like less than 50%. Like
yeah,
you're gonna get an infection in something and then
yeah,
like
yeah.
sayonara, right? And so like the ability to have like the balance strength coordination, which when you do unilateral movements of like single leg balance control work or even single leg knee touches, shin touches, toe touches, like RDL style movements,
Mm,
those are amazing for you because they also reset your hips, which resets your lower back,
yeah,
right? The ability to do like a single leg hip bridge on the ground. There's no weight to it, but when you can actually engage your glutes and make your glutes stronger, that's going to help out your lumbar spine, your lower back, which is going to help out your upper and mid thoracic region up through your shoulders for better posture and all
yeah,
that stuff, right? And a lot of times, if you're talking about sports in general, like golf, you usually golf like a certain direction, right?
mm,
Like you're golfing righty. Well, you all of a sudden you're getting a twisting motion down your lower right spine. Like we got to figure out like what's going on in there. So a lot of times it can be like overcompensation of like one side's stronger, one side's weaker, one side's more mobile, one side's more immobile, all those sorts of things. But
yeah,
when you train unilaterally, it really helps to like make a 100% load or tension on just that one extremity for
yeah,
that point in time. And it's not just legs. I love doing like single arm movements for upper body as
yeah,
well. But I also love bilateral movements where it's like, two arms moving at the same time or
yeah,
two arms moving up and down at the same time or two like doing squats in some way, shape, or form. But realizing that maybe you used to back squat in your 20s but you should still squat, but maybe you don't back squat anymore. Maybe you do a goblet squat or maybe you
mm,
do a box squat, right?
yeah,
Like if you want to get off the toilet on your own and you're 60s, 70s, 80s,
yeah,
right? Then you're gonna have to figure out how to squat, right?
yeah,
I'm not saying that to be crass, but I'm like saying it as actual like what do you think you're doing when you sit down on a toilet, right? Like
yeah,
you
yeah.
don't
I watched a
you want
show
to have
on,
some sort of independence for yourself, right?
yeah. I saw a show on Netflix. I think it was called The Blue Zone. It was a guy who studied
Yeah.
octogenarians or whatever around the world. And in North America, because we have couches, I don't know,
Yeah.
we don't squat anymore. And you go to all these other parts of the world. I mean, they're gardening, they're squatting,
Yeah.
they're walking, they're doing all kinds of things all
Yeah,
the
go check
time.
out the public toilets in Asia. If you've traveled to Asia, it's
Yeah,
definitely
exactly.
some you're like, what is that whole how am I supposed to do
Yeah.
my business down there? And you realize like, all right, you got to get down, you got to get some dorsiflexion in those ankles,
Yeah.
But there's a lot of truth to that. Like you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, and where are the blue zones at? They're not in North America,
No. Yeah.
And here we are, like the richest area of the world, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's no blue zones here.
No. No. Uh, I've loved our conversation. If there's one thing you'd want people to take away from this, what would that one thing be?
I think that like understanding that the best workout you can do is the one that you actually do,
Mm,
like where don't overthink it. Like realize that exercise truly is the best medicine for yourself, but it's more internal and that leads to an external robustness for your body in general,
mm,
right? Where, look at like curbing excuses figuring out life is always going to be challenging. Life is not fair. And figuring out ways that you can come up with solutions with the limited time or equipment or ability that you have at that moment in time. And just say, at worst, I can go for a 10-minute walk,
mm.
right? Like, at best, maybe I can do an hour workout today and just get a huge pump on,
Yeah.
right? But, maybe the right balance is somewhere in between the two. But the main thing is to like think about is being as consistent as possible within your daily process. Like whatever you want to be successful at, if you're consistent
Mm,
in investing, if you're consistent in studying, you're going to get better grades. You're going to become wealthier. Like that sort of a thing. You're gonna if you're consistent in your workouts, you will become healthier and stronger.
yeah.
There's no guesswork into it on that one. Like if you show up and you do your workouts, you're going to live a fantastic, healthiest life possible for yourself
Mm.
to your utmost potential. And I'll stand on my soapbox and beat my chest on that one for till the day I'm gone,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I love it. If people are interested in the Chris Ryan app or your other programs you're doing, where's the best place for them to
Yeah.
check you out?
They can check out chrisryanfitness.com. So just CHRISRYAN fitness.com. They can also check me out on Instagram. My social handles are at Chris Ryan Fitness. And they can also email me at just Chris at chrisryanfitness.com as well. That's my
Yeah.
personal email. I respond. I get lots of emails every day reaching out for a whole host of different things,
Yeah.
whether it's podcast opportunities or people looking for training or media outlets looking for a fitness expert and that sort of thing, but I try to always respond within 24 hours to my email. And I love being in touch with people from all over the world,
Yeah.
So it's really fun to see what's going on in people's lives in different realms of the world and see what's going on in people's lives at different stages of their own careers or their own development and their own age, wherever they're at right now. And sort of helping them surprise themselves with their own potential has always been speaks to my soul near and dear for sure.
Yeah. That's great. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I know I'm leaving here motivated uh,
Oh, good. I love it. You gotta
to
stay
work out.
strong for those future grandkids.
Absolutely. So I hope everyone who watches this feels the same way. It's
Yeah.
been a pleasure meeting you and talking to you, and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Greg. I'd love to be back on again at any point.
All right. Thanks, man.